do we really want to see every decision scrutinised? And we've got players doing this, or we've got fans doing this on every bit of contact inside the penalty area, or do we really allow the referee to referee?
Thanks for listening to the latest Beyond the Backfall podcast, available on YouTube and all podcast platforms. Subscribe now so you don't miss a single episode.
Welcome back to Beyond the Back Four. Today we've got a huge topic to debate. Has VAR broken football? It's a really simple question, but I don't know if the answer will be so straightforward. For this conversation, we've got football journalist, a man on the inside, it's Graeme Bailey, then a former referee who will know exactly what the ins and outs with VAR are, it's Mark Clattenburg, and then football finance expert who understands who's making money out of all of this is Kieran Maguire. Okay, I suppose, Mark, we'll start with you. How did VAR come about? How did we get to this point? What was the idea? What's the product?
Well, first of all, it came about because there was so many decisions, and one that came in particular, which really changed everybody's mindset, was the Thierry Henry handball. And I think that was the pivotal moment where football decided that they couldn't have, for example, the Irish team not qualifying for a tournament where there was such huge stakes and a clear mistake by the referee, even though everybody accepted that the referee was blindsided. It was one of them moments in a game where the referee, who was the one person on the pitch, didn't have the perfect angle. And then the goal was given, and I think everybody felt there was an unjust. So they were trying to find a system that they could work with. We had goal line technology, which is a factual decision straight to the watch. I think that was a positive step forward. But how we then brought a technology system into the world of football, which is a difficult thing because other sports, it's factual decisions, where football is very subjective. To bring it in that people can accept, and we can accept when the huge decision can be put right, like the Thierry Henry handball, which was easy to spot. But we've now created an animal which is creating frustration. It's creating more controversies because we're trying to find a system that's global, not just English football. We're trying to find a system that's accepted globally, that we can use it in Australia, MLS, the Premier League, Italia, Serie A, all of these countries. And they're trying to find the lawmakers, IFAB and FIFA, that they can be consistently used around the world. Unfortunately, it's creating the issues that we're seeing year on year on subjective decisions where, is it a penalty? Is this high line of intervention, which I keep hearing about? Some weeks penalties are given, some weeks are not. And that's where the frustrations lie, and that some teams are benefiting and some teams aren't on a week-to-week basis. Managers are potentially can lose their jobs on the back of a VAR mistake, which we saw in the last few weeks, the PGM World coming out and saying that there's been a mistake happened in a game on a subjective decision. And, this doesn't help that clubs are losing matches. Yes, we'll see. I think last season when I saw a report brought out by the PGM World in the Premier League, that it does balance a little bit out, but it doesn't balance completely out. When we're talking maybe 2 or 3 points can affect your season, and them 3 points can move you up 3 or 4 places, which creates another financial issue, which can help you in your financial fair play the following season. So there's all of these things and factors brought in, which is creating the problem with VAR.
Graeme, we've obviously had issues already this season with VAR. For anyone who's unaware, do you want to remind us of what the bigger ones have been?
Well, obviously the biggest one in recent times is the one at Stamford Bridge, which was obviously the twist and turn from Rodrigo Muniz and Trevor Chalobah's challenge. Was it a stamp? Wasn't it a stamp? But then it was referral to VAR, wasn't it? It was Michael Salisbury talking to Rob Jones, which I actually found the conversation quite revealing. I quite enjoyed Not in the macabre way, but I like to hear what they were talking about. And when I think when I was although inevitably they got it wrong, I actually enjoyed the conversation to see why they came to the decision, and they were talking. I had a lot more sympathy for them after hearing that conversation, rather than just the Howard Webb straight away almost defending the PGMOL by dropping Michael Salisbury straight away and coming out and apologising. And you don't come out and apologise straight away, Howard Webb. Fix it. And I don't know whether Mark agrees with this. I suspect in the next few weeks we're going to see a raft of decisions where a referee goes to the screen and he overrules the VAR official. And that's just human nature. I think we're going to see within the next month at least 4 or 5 decisions, something because we haven't really seen that before, have we? We haven't seen a referee go over and go, do you know what, mate, I don't agree with that, I'm going to stick to my on-field decision. I think we're going to see a raft of these come in, and it'll probably balance too much the other way. It'll probably, because it's not right at the moment, where we should have seen a few of these. I suspect the next few weeks we're going to see quite a few of these where he'll go over and say to his mate, his colleague, and say, actually, I like my on-field decision, I'm going to stick to it, which I think there should be more of, and hopefully in the long run we'll see a balancing up of that.
Kieran, I'm conscious I want to bring you in, but Mark, what's your reaction to that? I saw you nodding.
It's interesting because what we've seen, last 4 or 5 seasons, even long, it's about 5, 6 seasons now that the VAR has been inside the Premier League, and I think I've only seen on maybe 1 or 2 occasions where the referee has actually overruled the VAR, and I think it's a difficult one because there hasn't been many, and I think that the perception is that within refereeing world that if the VAR who's got all of the angles and all of the slow motions, the feeling is, and when I was a referee using VAR, your feeling is when you're going to that screen, you are thinking that I've made a mistake because the VAR has had all of the time in the world to check that decision. So automatically the referee's mindset when he goes to that screen is that I've made a mistake. So that's the first point. It's not a decision that's questionable. You're automatically going. And my problem is, and I saw this with the Fulham situation a few weeks ago at Chelsea, was the VAR was guiding the referee into his decision by the angles he was showing, the speed of the challenge that he was showing. It was automatically thinking, I'm justifying this decision. And I thought if the referee, and I would love to see this more with referees when they go through the process, and where rugby union is at such a higher level at the moment when it comes to communication with the match officials, the referee and the TMO compared to referee and the VAR, is that when the referee discusses it, he's guiding the conversation, not the VAR. So the referee will say, show me in real time. And that would have been the key moment for Rob Jones to actually say, that's a football action. That's a normal action. Actually, the Chelsea Chalobah's going into the challenge. He's going in to a challenge that he can't win. Therefore, that's a natural reaction, a natural action in a real-time motion. The problem you saw when I watched it and I saw what the VAR was doing, he was using slow motion, which made it look like the Fulham player had actually made a foul. It wasn't the case. And I think what referees need to do is ask the VAR all of the questions and not allow the VAR to dictate the decision. And that's the issue that we've got at the moment. And that's where Howard Webb has to push, because what I believe in, I don't automatically agree with Graeme. I don't think we'll see referees overturning VAR decisions. I think it'll be the opposite. I think VAR will be less likely to interfere. So we'll see more probably mistakes, but it won't be the mistake where the VAR's made the mistake. It will be the VAR supporting the referee's initial decision, which is where we want to be. But I think what we've got at the moment with the new generation of Premier League referees, and this is not a criticism, I've been a referee. When I was a Premier League referee, we had a big experience, a lot of experienced referees. So the mistakes were less. What we've got now is a new group of referees who are allowed to make mistakes. They're young. They are going to make mistakes. The problem is the VAR isn't putting the subjective decisions right for them. And that's the issue that we're having at the moment. Once the young referees become better, I prefer referees making the decisions. What you see in international football, if you watch Champions League compared to the Premier League, The Champions League referees are brilliant at making the decisions because they are the best in Europe. They are experienced and they are making the decision. So VAR is less likely to interfere. The Premier League's the opposite. We've got young referees making mistakes, not getting put right.
Kieran, did you watch the game? So I also watched it. And so you and I would be relatively neutral watching that game because neither of us support either club. And from that perspective, I actually found the decision over the penalty that João Pedro eventually scored more frustrating in that they looked for the first handball, then they were looking at the possibility of a second handball by a Chelsea player. And that I found more frustrating as just a football fan. Because they couldn't make a decision. And then they start looking, the VAR are looking for multiple issues because, of course, they don't want to get caught out and go, well, we gave it for this handball and, we missed that one. But from your perspective, just as a football fan, how do you take it? And in a game like that where there's big controversy, what's your view on it?
My view on VAR, and I'm coming in it purely from a financial angle, whilst I count myself as a fan, is that it has substantially reduced the number of errors. I think it was sold to fans as it's going to reduce the number of errors to zero, which was unrealistic. So therefore, I think it's been incredibly poorly marketed. The delays in making a decision is something else which was not. It was not sold. If you said, right, you can have matches which should take 102 minutes now, and you're going to have to get used to it. I think that's taken as a surprise. Individual decisions that we like arguing about them. As Mark's rightly said, the subjective element cannot be fully resolved because you can look at things in slow motion and real time. You can look at things head on or sideways and you get a completely different picture, and it becomes just as subjective. And the fact that we're walking away saying that decision was right, that was decision wrong, and then you're still arguing in the pub afterwards, it's part of football. But in terms of those Chelsea decisions, Chelsea have done really well so far out of VAR, but it's a 38 match season, and we don't know what's going to happen. For me, I'm still coming to terms with Aston Villa not getting relegated about 5 seasons ago. That was the worst of the lot when the ball crossed the line and goal wasn't given.
Mark, you're the only one that will truly know the answer to this. So last season there were 18 errors from VAR, which is a lot less than there would be if we didn't have VAR. There would be more penalties given or not given that shouldn't have been, and more red cards that shouldn't have been given. But I wonder if fans, the frustration over one VAR decision is so much higher than the threshold to fans' frustration over to one incorrect refereeing decision prior to VAR. Because when I had this conversation once with Sir Alex Ferguson, this was his viewpoint, is it's much easier to forgive a referee who makes a mistake in the moment, even if you are passionately against that decision, than it is to wait 4 minutes and then feel that the wrong decision has still been made. It's much harder to forgive that incorrect call because they've watched it, you've watched it, you've all seen it, and it's still come out wrong and you've had to wait. But only you would know if people are angrier about VAR than they were about refereeing mistakes.
Yeah, and I think there's a point of what Sir Alex has said. I think he listens to a lot of coaches that are before current using the system prior and now using the system. I think going back to the point, just to give people an understanding, the KMI errors that they refer to, the PGM World, is an independent panel run by the Premier League. So it's an ex-referee, an ex-coach, ex-coach, ex-players, and they look at each incident. They look at all the key match incidents every week. And what I see, and then speaking to Howard Webb some years ago, PGM World don't always agree with the KMI panel, and the KMI panel don't always agree with PGM World. So it's an interesting body. I get why the panel was brought out to give a bit more clarity, a bit more consistency, and a bit more backing. When there was incorrect decisions made, people could see, or the Premier League could see, how many decisions are incorrect decisions. But it was interesting when I was working for Nottingham Forest, and I would analyse all of their data from this side of, for example, mistakes, because Nottingham Forest 2 seasons ago thought they'd been given a lot of incorrect decisions, which the KMI panel actually backed up. But they wouldn't back up everything. So from a refereeing point of view, and being a referee for many years, I referred, for example, the Everton Nottingham Forest game that created a huge discussion after the match, post-match with Nottingham Forest. I believe that there was at least 2 penalties in that game. Nottingham Forest think 3, but from a professional referee, I thought at least 2, and they were both involving Ashley Young. One for the handball, which was very similar to the one, for example, given it Fulham Chelsea. They put the arms out and make the body bigger. The second one was the third situation with Ashley Young. The third penalty shout was the one that the KMI panel thought was a penalty. But it's interesting that it's not always, we can't always rely on that data. So it's a data that is sometimes, I think, for example, I remember listening to Mike Riley, who was the head of refereeing in Petermore. He would say year on year, the mistakes were reducing, but nobody ever saw that as a fan or as a coach of a club or a fan of a club. Nobody saw that because everybody's seen that the standards of refereeing had slightly dipped. And I think it's the same with Howard Webb. When you've got statistics, you can hide behind statistics. You can say, look, there's only 6 KMI errors at this point of the season where there was 10 last season. So that means actually refereeing's getting better, but we don't see that. And I think I'm not always worrying about the panel. What I see is, do I see referees refereeing better, or are they relying on VAR more? And I think referees are not given the decision initially, which means referees aren't as good as they used to be. Can they be as good? Of course they can, with training, a lot of development. They can be. But at the moment, I would rather see referees making the decisions and then the VARs only coming in on situations which are clearly wrong. And I think we've got to accept in football as well, which I think Sir Alex did. Without VAR, referee was the sole person. And I think we've got to accept at some point where we want to see VAR. Do we really want to see every decision scrutinized? And we've got players doing this, or we've got fans doing this on every bit of contact inside the penalty area? Or do we really allow the referee to referee? And if it's subjective, one person says it is, the other person isn't, it should just stay with the referee. We shouldn't have this scrutiny that we're seeing over the last 3-4 years, where every decision is looked at in fine detail, and you can find whatever you want if you really, really look into a decision 10 times from 10 different angles. But that's not what VAR was for. That's not what football wants. Football wants excitement. We want goals. But I think sometimes with VAR, watch, we saw at Chelsea, Fulham, goals getting chalked off. We've looked at offsides. We're seeing now more goals being chalked off for offside than we've ever done in the past, God knows how many years. That's because, unfortunately, technology's perfect, and we're now 1 millimeter offside is offside. You think back, and I say this to a lot of people, if you look back 10 years ago when we watched Match of the Day, our 2 eyes used to go, that's onside. Now it's not, because of where the camera angles are, that actually were incorrectly given, but we accepted it. But we've got to now find a way to accept the way the game is. And the only way we're going to improve the game is if we lower our expectations of what we want as from VAR.
Graeme, really interesting there, but also really interesting that Mark said that he thinks some referees are not giving decisions and leaving it to the VAR, because that's been an accusation from fans for a long time. What is your view of VAR from a fan perspective? Does it impact how you're watching football? Because there are people who will say, I don't enjoy it anymore, VAR's ruining the game. I mean, that's why we're having this debate ultimately.
Well, yeah, I'm fortunate. The one few benefits from supporting a team outside the Premier League is that I don't have to put up with VAR every week. And that is one of the benefits that in the AFL that we do have. So yeah, we do enjoy them goal celebrations more. Although we don't see too many of them at Middlesbrough, but when we do, we know we can cheer it, because we're not sat waiting for the. It's like the Premier League was sat waiting for that Wimbledon decision, and Wimbledon have moved on from that now. They don't have that Hawkeye thing where the fans are going, oh, but we still got that in football. And we're not really moving away from it. I would say it's interesting what Mark said there about the millimetre thing. I remember 10 years ago when I was playing with my friends, and I now play with my son on FIFA, and you used to be playing, and the game used to give offside. And the one thing I used to always say, that is so unrealistic, it is so annoying, that would never be given in real life. But now, roll on 10 years, it would be given. So now it is realistic. It's fascinating that we have advanced in that regard.
Kieran, what do you think is next for VAR? Listening to Mark, listening to Graeme, what would you like to see happen? Do you want to see the system gone? Do you want to see massive change? Do you want to see a huge overhaul, or just a bit of fine tuning?
Probably a bit of the latter. Technology is here to stay. Technology arises in other sports. I'm a huge cricket fan, and I think that sort of the decision making and the appeals, that has now become part of the game. I love the fact that there is an umpire's call, and perhaps that should be given greater emphasis as far as football is concerned. I think there's also a case for the laws of the game were not brought in for a VAR environment, and we need to reconsider some of the laws, such as offside, because it does seem crazy that somebody's being penalised and goals are being denied for millimetre related decisions. But even if you change the laws, there's going to be a new millimetre. It's just going to be further back. So where we go, I think needs to be addressed. But in my environment, I'm fully aware that some clubs, if we probably didn't have VAR, potentially would be putting in lawsuits for denial of getting into the Champions League, or they're being relegated. At least we do have a technology-based approach, which certainly frustrates you as fans, unless, of course, it goes in your favour. In which case, you don't. Every time my side has a goal chalked off to the opposition due to VAR, I don't see anybody around me going, "Oh, that took far too long." So we all have a partisan interest in VAR, and because negative news goes through a megaphone and normal news goes through a microphone, every decision that goes against you will be the one that you discuss after the match, whereas the ones that went in favour, they'll have been forgotten about.
Cheered. One view that has come up a few times as a way to fix VAR would be for both teams to have like a VAR coach on the touchline watching the game, and then each team gets, like you get in tennis, a number of calls. And then the referee, if you put a call in, the same referee watches it on a monitor to watch the same thing. So you've got, instead of having somebody else, so then the same referee is watching it. So you've not got that concept of like, well, it's being refereed by someone else. It's the same person's opinion. They saw it in real time. Now they're going to see it again on a different screen. Would you like something like that introduced? Or do you think it's just about just fixing what we already have and giving maybe the referees more power on the pitch and slightly removing VAR?
I think from my point of view, if you do have challenges, I'm all for looking at things to improve. So if they're going to trial it, FIFA and IFAB will trial it. I think it's been talked about. It's still not been trialed yet. So if in major and some competitions that, it's all right, youth football, but if they're going to try it to see how it would impact in the future, that would be interesting, because that would create another job for me. 100%, because what clubs would do, it would.
Yeah.
Clubs would do, instead of having a set piece coach, they're going to have now a coach sitting or being mic'd up to the coach. Because, for example, if I've got a challenge and I'm working for a club and I don't believe it's a challenge because I know that it won't be overturned, but the coach thinks he's going to do it, then I'm going to say to him, don't do it. He's going to rely on some ex-referees to make them decisions for him. Is he going to challenge it or not? Because what they think is a challenge, I'm going to be saying, no, don't challenge. For example, when I worked in Nottingham Forest, I didn't agree with what the clubs thought was a yellow card, for example. So I can see how clubs think. So it would create another job. I'm not all for this side of it. I think there's one simple solution from refereeing side, and what I believe can help the game is strip VAR back at the moment, back to a minimal. So you're going to go, I'm only going to bring it in. We've got the technology for ball over the line, which works perfectly well. There's no issues except that time straight after COVID. I think, was it Sheffield United, Aston Villa?
Yeah, there was that weird, that people on the line,
that happens,
wasn't there?
That happens. Yeah. But in reality, that has worked wonderfully, wonderfully well. And we accept the millimetre over the line because that is it's a goal. So if the ball isn't 1 millimeter over the line, it's a goal. We accept it. Same with offsides. If it's 1 millimeter, unfortunately, it's offside. So we'll have it for offsides. We have it for goal. We have it for the ball going over the goal line because it's factual. Ball going over the touch line, it's factual. If there's a clear foul and it happens outside, it's factual. We don't need the referee to go to the on-field monitor because the VAR can factually make the decision. Finished. We don't want VAR, in my opinion, to then start getting into the subjective decisions. Let the referee deal with the subjective decisions, which then goes back to what Sir Alex Ferguson said. Allow the referee to make the decision. And if, in the opinion of some fans, the referee's made a mistake, the other side will say he's not made a mistake because it's the way football is. It's so great to debate without that technology, but still have it for the really ones, the Frank Lampard situation in the World Cup where the ball was clearly over. They're the decisions that will cost clubs. The ones where we are
Can I
fighting with.
interrupt you? Because
Yeah.
doesn't this still leave the door open to Thierry Henry and his handball?
Because that would be that would be the one that would create that so blatant. Do you know what I mean? He's
Okay,
made
so
a
when they're
cheating action.
enormous,
They're not the way I'm talking about the Fulham one. That would not have went to the VAR. Would not even have looked at that because it was a genuine challenge in midfield. The referees made the call. One side of the stadium will think he's wrong. One side of the stadium is right. It's finished. There's no frustrations waiting 5 minutes for a decision that we don't know. Is it right or is it wrong? We talked about the handball, for example, the 2 handballs, the offside. All they would have checked was the player in an offside position. No, therefore it's a handball. Finished. The referee give the handball. Therefore, the discussion is it offside or not? No, let's go. And I think it would create less time because a lot of the factual decisions can be dealt with within a few seconds, and we can make we can make the game more faster. We can make the game more understandable from a football fan. And that's where I want to see it at. I want to get back to, I think what, Kieran said about cricket. We know when the umpire's going to come in and when the umpire's not going to come in. And football at the moment, we don't know when the VAR is going to get involved. And I think that's where the frustration lies.
I want to point out, Graeme and Kieran, that Mark's view or sort of stripped back VAR does sound glorious. But imagine the call system that I suggested with the ex-referees where they're mic'd up talking to the coaches about whether or not they should appeal. But imagine if we can hear that feed as the audience. So I just have a think about it. What do you think is better, Graeme?
Well, obviously, as a huge NFL fan, they do have those coaches in the stand who, it's like in cricket, they've got a certain amount of time to throw the flag, and they are telling them, because obviously when you have a coach's challenge, it's not unlimited. You would have 2.5 maybe, and so it's very important that if you throw them 2 and get them wrong, you're not going to suffer the consequences later on. Yeah, I agree totally with Mark. I think I said in a previous pod, I think most of it can be done through the watch. I think the yellow and red card thing's an issue. I don't know if Mark agrees. We've seen a few, haven't we, where, again, it's that thing when I find whenever you slow a challenge down, 9 out of 10 of them look like red cards. But in real time, probably 2 out of 10 of them look like it. It's such a tough situation that where I totally agree with Matt, though. I think this automated offside thing is a good thing. I think when it came in at the Qatar World Cup, remember that first game when that Ecuador goal was disallowed, we thought, oh, that's nonsense. Of course it's not offside. But then when it actually showed he was, I think there's a bit of a change there, but it's taken that long for us to see it in England and in Europe, hasn't it? The automated system, which I do like, actually. I know the 1 millimetre thing isn't great, but as Matt said, if he is 1 millimetre offside, he is offside. Simple as that. So yeah, it's as we've been discussing, it's such a complicated thing. But I do agree with Mark. I think it should be stripped back, and then then you're not going to get too many of these things that you saw at Fulham, where you're just getting too involved. That's the thing. You're getting too involved, and I said I agree with Matt totally.
Okay, Kieran, I think we've got a clear opinion from Mark and Graeme. End this for us. How should VAR occur going forward?
Mainly should be focused on objective decisions. I think everybody agrees with that. I'd introduce a 30-second rule. If VAR can't make its mind up in 30 seconds, then you go along with the referee's decision, because the referee's seeing it in real time, and it means also that I get home to watch Strictly.
Okay, great. That's come out of nowhere. Good. That's important too. All right. I think it seems like a total agreement that everybody's happy with VAR, but would like to see it stripped back a little bit to be less involved in the game when it comes to subjective decisions. Guys, thank you so much. For everybody else, get in the comments below. Let us know what you think of VAR. Keep it, abandon it, bring in the calls decision. There's lots of options, but it's been a joy to listen to Mark talk about it because obviously he actually knows what he's talking about. Not suggesting that Graeme and Kieran don't. I'm sure Kieran is an authority when it comes to Strictly and how the points are awarded out. So we'll see you on the next one on Monday. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to the latest Beyond the Backfull podcast, available on YouTube and all podcast platforms. Subscribe now so you don't miss a single episode.